Yeah, g'day YouTubers. Tinker O'Toole with another video. In today's session, we're going to review STIHL's Hexa. It's been about 4 years since I brought my first Hexa chain. Brought it in a box like this. Comes with 2 chains, handle, and a file. Now, Hexa definitely cuts better than standard full chisel. But it's a narrow kerf chain, meaning that it's about 10% kerf. It's a lot less than the standard RS chain. And being smaller means that it requires less horsepower. If you're to measure the individual tooth of a STIHL's RS chain, it's about 4.5 millimetre per tooth, left and right. So the overall width from the left hand to the right hand is what we refer to as narrow kerf, has been reduced by at least 10%. So therefore it requires less horsepower and it's more efficient at cutting. Plus the design of the tooth, which looks a little bit similar to that. You have your side plate angle coming in at 65 degrees, then going down another 60 degrees and then going across like that there. So obviously with a hexagonal profile, you need a hexagonal file that looks like this. On the bottom, as you can see on the bottom here, there's no lines for the file. The lines have only got 2 sides, and on the top you've got this raised section so that you know that that's the top. You can use this even in the file guides, the Gramberg or the STIHL FG2, it can be done in there as well. Probably the biggest downside of the STIHL's Hexa are these bloody files. These things are around about $18 a pop. So that doesn't make a lot of people want to jump to Hexa straight away. But there is an alternative. And the alternative is to dress a grinding wheel. If you've got a chainsaw grinder, it's something to think about, that you could dress your chainsaw grinding wheel to suit the Hexa profile. And we'll go over the procedure in case you've got a chainsaw grinder. And all you need to do is I've made a steel template up like that. You could make a template up out of thicker cardboard, or even better, plastic would work good. Roughly, it's about 110 millimeters in length, about 62 millimeters in height, 60-degree angle on here. So we turn it this side, dress the wheel, turn it the other side, dress the wheel. There's our 120 degrees, like a V shape there. Plus we use the side of the wheel. So we've got 3 sides to Hexa. Side of the wheel going down, then going flat. They're the 3 sides. So we've got to dress those 3 sides like that. And it's interesting when we look at Hexa, because what I normally do now, if I see these on special, I'll buy them. So a lot of times around springtime, or every now and then, the STIHL dealer puts them out on the counter at a discounted price. So I brought this kit for $80. It's 25-inch, 84 drive links. So that works out $40 each, plus a handle and a file. So that puts the chain, yeah, at least around about $35, or just over $30 a chain. So that's pretty cheap for a 25-inch chain. Probably should have got bloody 2 boxes of them. Anyway, if you can't find them on special and you've got to pay full price, the alternative is to make your own. Now, if you do make your own, you won't be able to get the 3/8 narrow kerf. No one seems to sell 3/8 narrow kerf chain. So you've got to use standard 3/8. Your performance will drop off, but nonetheless, it may drop off a little bit, but you're still going to be much faster than standard full chisel chain. And also, the other thing that I found out with Hexa is also you'll get an extra tank full before you've got to resharpen it. So let's just say, like especially here in Australia with our eucalypt, our hardwood timber, I might go 3 or 4 tankfuls on a standard chain, and then I go, oh, it's still cutting okay, but I prefer it to be razor sharp. So rather let it get really dull, I'll swap the chain out. If I'm running Hexa, I'll get that extra chain in there, an extra tank full. So I'll be cutting an extra half an hour or 40 minutes extra. Australian hardwood, because it's so hard, the chains don't last as long and you've got to sharpen much more frequently. If you're cutting softwood, well, the chains last 2-3 times longer between sharpenings. Okay, so we'll look at a grinder, we'll look at setting it up and how easy it really is, and we'll go over that process. Okay, so here we've got a clone of a Oregon 511, and we need to set up some parameters on here before we start doing anything. And as I mentioned earlier before, you need to make yourself a template like that, approximately 110 millimeters in length, around about 60 mil high, and you need a slope on there of about 60 degrees. So you need to make something like that. Okay, the first thing you need to do is set your top plate, lock it in a position on 0 degrees. Next, we need to set the movable head, all right? So we need to put that back to 90 degrees vertical, right? Okay. That's in the vertical position. We'll just come out of that zoom. Next thing we need to do is place this in the slot. But there's not enough room because the back stops. So you need to flick that back and loosen that all the way back. Now you'll notice as I'm winding that back, there's a little red line on there. It's about 10 millimeters or so. What the idea of that is to make sure that I don't have it sitting crooked. That's about level. So I'm looking at the line that I've marked there. That's about level. We'll put that in there and clamp it. So that's clamped with the right. We've got 90 degrees on the wheel. We've got 60 degrees here. So we're going to put a beveled angle, right, of 60 degrees on this wheel. We've already got this edge on here that we use, but we need 60 degrees on here, and we need 60 degrees on that side. So we've got the angle. Now, this type of grinding block that comes with a grinder, to me, it's made out of exactly the same material the grinding wheel is. It may be slightly harder, but you seem to be able to grind these away relatively quickly. So I don't have a lot of faith in that type of little grinding block. What I like to use, made by Norton, called a general purpose dressing stick for bench grinding wheels. So yeah, and it's made out of silicon carbide, much harder than aluminium oxide. So this is a great, it's broken in half. I dropped it on the ground, but that's okay. It actually works better that size. And we can start the grinder and keep your fingers down the bottom and move this backwards and forwards as you come in a slight contact with the grinding wheel. So it's just a matter of starting the grinding wheel like that and moving this up and down nice and slowly. Just do it nice and slow, and do it enough that you only grind halfway into the wheel, right? So don't grind it too much so that you grind more than half of the wheel. You don't want that. You want to come right into the middle of the wheel. Now you've got to do the other side. So that's just a matter of turning this around to the other side, locking that in position, making sure that you got the red line and it's nice and straight. And that's just a matter of doing the same thing, starting the grinder and going up and down like that, stopping the grinder and making sure that it's dressed equally from the left to the right. And as you can see right there, it's good enough. That is good enough. There's nothing wrong with that. You might get a slight little variation between the left and the right. Don't worry about a very slight variation. The other thing to also remember, that what's probably a little bit critical, is that when you use chainsaw grinders, or any grinder for that matter, you can get what we call wheel run out, which means that the wheel doesn't spin true. It's a little bit of movement from left and right. So you may have to adjust the little screw on the side there, move the wheel into different positions, spin the wheel until the wheel runs true without no run out on it, and then dress the wheel left and right. Once you've got your wheel dressed like that, only occasionally do you need to redress it. And even then, that's when you can get away with using a little tiny block like this, which means that you're just going to barely touch it, right? So that's dressing the wheel. Once the wheel's dressed, then we're ready to sharpen hexa. So what I'm going to do is get the chain out, sit the chain inside here. If I made too much of a mistake, it's not going to sit into the hexa very good. But I've done this before, and any mistakes that I made in the past, it's like anything else. You may make a few little mistakes here and there. Don't worry if you're out a few degrees here and there. That's not going to really have any detrimental effect on the chain. But just bear in mind that if you're not happy with it, I've got this little tiny diamond file, and what I use that for, if I just need to take a degree or two in a different, slightly change the angle, I can use the diamond file, and it works really good. I don't need to set this all up again. So if I'm just going to barely true it up to get it spot on. So what we'll do now, this wheel's been dressed. It's close enough. We'll see how close it really is. We'll put the chain in. This is a brand new STIHL Hexa, never been used. And what we want to do now is line up the grinding wheel into the tooth. If it doesn't line up properly, then it's just a matter of redressing the wheel ever so slightly. So, you know, you might want a couple of attempts at it. That's why I always keep a spare hexa unused, just so that I can dress my wheels up. So, to me, this is my template. Okay, so we'll zoom in and we'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so we've mounted the chain in the grinder. It's all set up with the correct angles. So now when we bring the grinding wheel down, I want to make sure that it's going to sit in there nice and snug. And that's pretty good, right? That's as good as what you want. It doesn't matter if it's just a fraction up, or look, if it's out a degree or two, it's not going to make any difference. So that's what you're looking at, right? And if you look at the wheel, you'll see there's the hexa angle there. So we've spoken about the performance of hexa, how it outperforms standard full chisel, and if you grind a standard full chisel with a hexa profile, it will still outperform standard full chisel. So this profile certainly outperforms standard full chisel, as well as when you look at Husqvarna's C85 X-Cut, it outperforms standard full chisel. One of the main reasons is the narrow kerf. The second reason is that this profile, this hexagonal profile, does work really well, and you've got partial hexagonal profile built into Husqvarna's C85, but it's not as defined as STIHL's Hexa. So there is another way to do a type of grind, and I used to call it V-cut, and I was playing around with this years ago, and it looks like that. And the reason I call it V-cut, because when you have a look at it, it's a 90-degree angle. It's not 120 degrees, it's 90 degrees, see? So tilted on the side, it looks like a V. And it's very, very simple to duplicate. And if you get your grinding block, you can duplicate this just by going flat, right? So that's V cut, a sideways V. But if you want to duplicate Hexa, you can just hold your grinding block at a 45-degree angle, not a 60 degree, right? 60 degrees probably more like that. Hold it at a 45-degree angle and just go halfway across the wheel, or a fraction more, won't matter. And that's the simplest way. No templates, no nothing. Just hold it, set your wheel up vertical, hold it approximately 45 degrees. You're going to end up with a better profile than that. You're going to be grinding down here on a more of an angle. So that's a very simple way to do it without it. So now we'll just talk about the end conclusion of Hexa. Hexa came out over 5 years ago, heavily promoted by STIHL. You've got Hexa now in Pico, which is 3/8 low profile. You've got it in 0.325, and I assume not far down the track you're going to get it in 404. Hexa definitely outperforms most full chisel chains, excluding square ground. Square ground is the fastest of all, but the most difficult to file. So if you're not into filing, forget square ground, because the grinding systems for square ground are worth a lot of money. You can buy a kit for the Oregon style grinders called Square Jig. Square Jig, I think it's squarejig.com. You want to have a look at that. You can get some information on Square Jig. The final conclusion is that semi-chisel is the slowest, right? Full chisel is the next fastest. Hexa is the next fastest, and square ground is the fastest. So therefore, if you have some sort of Hexa profile, whether it's emulating this on a grinding wheel or whether it's doing it holding at a 45-degree angle like that, you'll still get excellent results doing it that way. So I've given you two ways to duplicate Hexa. The original way, which is this way here, or just holding your grinding block at roughly a 45-degree angle, you'll get a really good high performance tooth ground that way. Secondly, Hexa is a lot more durable. It certainly lasts a lot longer between sharpenings. When I say a lot longer, maybe 20%. And it cuts faster. The other thing is, if you want to call it a plus, you don't need to worry about 10 degrees downward tilt. The side plate and the top plate cutting angle is uniform because we're grinding on the side of the wheel. So that's a bonus in itself, not have to muck around with sliding vices or tiltable vices. And because Hexa profile outperforms standard full chisel chain, that's the reason that I use it, because it's slightly faster. It's even more faster if you buy original Hexa, but if you grind standard full chisel into the Hexa profile, it will perform much faster than round ground, right? So hexagonal ground will perform better than your standard C shape, definitely, without a doubt. Anyway, I hope that information helps. We've revisited it. It's been over 4 years since I started playing around with Hexa, and nothing's changed. If anything, all my standard 3/8 and 404 chains, I put a Hexa profile in them. They all look like this, and they're all done on a grinding wheel. I do have the STIHL USG grinder. The actual wheel that you use for Hexa is 5 millimeters wide. This is 4.7 millimeters wide. So the USG grinder, I do actually sharpen Hexa on there as well. It's just that I like to be able to also do it on an Oregon style grinder. And as you can see, it works quite well. So yeah, look, any comments are welcome. If you're not too sure about what I was presenting and you'd like to have something explained more clearly, just drop us a comment and I will do that. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.